Hello, everyone. Welcome to a very special podcast. I'm here with my friend and fellow time traveler, Linda McGillis, and we are going to talk about Talawanda because, Linda's the one that introduced me to Talawanda. I had not even heard of that story, the Enlightenment, etc. And it really changed my life. And as you guys know, made a film about it and had all kinds of great teaching points. So, Linda, welcome to this little podcast that I'm doing.
Hello, Chris.
So we have a lot of good conversations. And one of the things that we wanted to do is definitely record them. So this is the first time we're doing that. And this one, we're going to have the focus on Talawanda, but I think we're probably going to go a little bit everywhere. So for people that don't know anything about Talawanda, what I want to do first to kind of set the scene is play a trailer that was made, and it'll kind of it's only like a couple of minutes, but it'll give you guys like a feel for it in case you forgot it or haven't even seen Talawanda. So if you're ready, here we go.
Narrow airport. The closer we got to the ground, the more nervous I became. I remember how it all started. Los Angeles, California, where I worked as a secretary. I kept searching for things in my future that I could look forward to. Then came the first miracle. There was going to be a rare performance given by an illusionist named Talawanda. Something told me that I had to see that performance. I'll never forget his godly presence. I only wish that somehow I could have attracted his attention. Good morning, Alana. A teletype message came in for you from someone in Brazil. You are invited to come and spend a week or so with me in Rio de Janeiro. I never saw this man before in my life until last Friday, and even then I was never introduced to him. What should I say? How should I act? Would he even like me? I care about you too much to play games with romance. Soon, you will understand. He created parts of his world just for you. I was overwhelmed by the splendor and beauty which I beheld all around. There are sights and sensations in this universe which you would probably never dream of. I still get this feeling that some piece to the puzzle is missing. You're right. Something is missing. The truth. One does not abandon his companion just because the pages of history grow too old to remember. If you absorbed half of what I taught you, then a miracle has indeed occurred.
Yeah, so there you go. That kind of sets the scene, and a lot of Talawanda was, part of it was like a love story. So there was that angle to it, and there was also the angle of Talawanda and his teachings. So right off the bat, Linda, I wanted to know, how you'd want to introduce like your feelings about Talawanda and the importance of it.
There's two different aspects for me. For me, there is what Talawanda represents. And Talawanda represents the wholeness of our consciousness as that whole creator aspect of using your innate intelligence as creator. On another aspect to the human that is awakening, that is remembering itself. He's representative of Elena's higher self, if you will. That's how it is presented through the romance part of it. In the spiritual communities, a lot of people call it their twin flame. and they mistaken it for another body, another human, if you will. But it was that connection of herself that created an experience for her to bring her back into that wholeness, if you will, if that makes sense. And Talawanda is that part of ourself when we fully connect back into wholeness, not just oneness, that shows that this was a creation, that this whole experience in time and space was a game that we chose to walk through, to play as the characters, even though we created it. And the beautiful thing about Talawanda is what so many people say is my truth, your truth, this truth, that truth. This certain, because you have to give away certainty as far as the human logical, I'm certain this is true, to this certainty of the innate living intelligence within you. And so Talawanda presents that to her, and he teaches her that aspect of it.
Yeah, so that's beautiful. And if I could go back a step, how did you learn about Talawanda? Because I know how I learned about it, driving around Montana with you, listening to this story. I think there was a woman that was like reading the book.
Yes.
And I like, at the time, I'm like, what is this Talawanda saying?
I had a lady send me a message back in, I want to say, late 2018 or early 2019. And she says, you remind me of Talawanda. She goes, everything you speak on is exactly like Talawanda. She goes, have you ever heard of this story called the Enlightenment? And she sent me the link, and that was the first time I had ever seen it. And then I shared it with when I had my private groups and stuff, I shared it with them to show another angle of the information that I had shared, the information of what I have remembered of my own connection to the innate, to source. And it was so profound for me because for me, that is who we are. Not the temporal human senses. And so for me, it was an incredible, accurate story. And it was a beautiful story of what so many ancient texts and stuff show about this sanctity of the union of opposites, of what people would call the sacred marriage, of changing from a horizontal axis to a vertical axis, if you will. And it's a beautiful story.
Yeah, it's a story that really affected me too. Even when I was doing like the reading of it, I became extremely emotional. You could feel yourself kind of falling into the story and like seeing beyond, the outside illusion. Who is this Talawanda person? What was he really trying to do? Who is Elena Taylor? What is an eternal partner? What is like all these different concepts?
It takes you into something that you have a feeling that in the story in and of itself connects you to that piece of you that doesn't necessarily make sense, but somehow that there is accuracy in it.
Right.
that it's part of yourself. And then the beautiful thing about Talawanda that he shares with Alana is the certainty of not having the doubt within herself to trust that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because one thing he tells her, if you can experience it, it is real.
Yes.
The one thing he did not say was, if you can think about it, it's real. The one thing he didn't say was, if you can feel it, it is real. And those are the two things that can misinterpret your innate, if you will. That inner knowing that you don't know why you know it, but you know it to be truthful or accurate. And if you really pay attention to the story, every bit that Talawanda shares, every bit of the intelligence, it's all about experience, not thinking, not a thought process, not emotions, not feeling. It's about experiencing it. And we gave up experiencing for believing, if that makes sense.
Gave up experiencing for believing. Yeah.
We gave up living, being a living intelligence, which is what he's presenting. You have created all this. You have forgotten that you have created this. You got caught up in what you created, which is the thinking, which is the mental attachments, the emotional attachments, the physical attachments of what you already know. And so we gave up seeing experience as evolutionary from ourselves, creating and experiencing, being a living essence in the experience. We gave it up for a mental and emotional veil. So the experience became a problem rather than the experience becoming a living essence of creation.
Yeah, you know what? That reminds me of there's a certain scene in the film. And by the way, if anyone hasn't seen it yet, I made another podcast with Greg from Storylands, and he explains how he put the whole film together. A lot of, he used AI to do it, like using all the latest filmmaking tools. But people think you press a button and like the AI just creates everything. And it's like, no, it doesn't. And you don't want that to happen anyway.
Well, AI can do that for you. However, you're giving your power away and so using it as a tool.
Yeah. Basically, you need to use it as a tool. There is one scene where they discuss the concept of how Alana got trapped, and I think it goes to the whole soul trap thing. So I have this scene queued up. I'm going to play it. It's about like 2.5 minutes, but I think it'll set the stage for what you were talking about how we got just so sucked into this illusion that we just thought it was real and just kept coming back and coming back and coming back. But let me see if I could play this scene for everyone so they can kind of see what I'm talking about here.
Well, it's the same with me in my relationship with the physical universe. I spend very little time here. It is actually dangerous for any powerful being to spend excessive amounts of time here without running the risk of becoming trapped. I frequently have to leave here and return to my own universe. That is the only way I can remain exterior to a game that I do not wish to play. This fascinated me, so I inquired, you said earlier that this universe was merely a dream, an illusion. Well, if this is true, then how can an illusion trap you? Talawanda smiled and said, that is a very good question. Now, let me ask you this. How did it trap you and the countless other beings who stepped in here? You came here for fun and enjoyment. And because this universe continued to entertain you like a giant amusement park, you gradually, over trillions of years, dwindled down in power and awareness. Why? Because this universe supplied you with all your pleasure and sensation. You stopped creating for yourself, and consequently, you became lazier and weaker from failure to exercise your powers. Look around you. Countless beings who could once move planets around now need telescopes just to see them. People wonder how an illusion can inflict pain on them. It's because they are under the hypnotic spell of this entire universe. A spell that has convinced them that they have no powers. They were once masters over this universe, and now they are confused, hypnotized, slaves, all because they stopped exercising their powers of illusion, their imaginations. Instead of doing the intelligent thing and waving their magic wands and garnishing the environment with beauty, they continue to search for beauty and excitement in the physical universe. Like a tractor stuck in the mud, they continue to dig themselves in deeper and deeper. Heaven is not a place you go to. It's a high-level state of awareness and certainty. In this state, the individual is capable of making illusions of such a vivid and satisfying quality that he no longer depends on this universe for pleasure.
Yeah, so he just said a lot right there.
He said it all right there.
Basically said it all.
You and Greg did an amazing job on the video.
Yeah,
On the film, amazing.
He's very talented. You know, he's a natural storyteller, and like everything, like every like few seconds, facial expressions, everything he had to do, he had to give it all the prompts, so to speak. So yeah, I think he did a really good job. And when you watch the film, it's like an hour and 25 minutes, but you just fall right into it.
Yeah, it was an amazing film. You know, excuse me, where Talawanda is sharing that is the mental and the emotional and physical attachments we have to our experiences, to that which we've already experienced and have become comfortable in navigating it, familiar in navigating it, and why it is so hard to accept change. When you look at how much any one of us got trapped in this illusion, and every one of us has, we've done this for millions of years. Repeated the same story, adding different characters, adding different rules, different mechanisms. And when you understand that you can never be separated from your source, that even the ideation of it separates us even more. And you step back out of your individual perception of it, you can really see how pleasure, how romance, how wealth, how power, how control became the living authority, the living God, instead of our innate, the living intelligence being who we are. And you look at your life and you reflect, or the collective narratives, you can see where it's all about those sensations, where the emotional and mental aspirations, if you will, became more important than that living intelligence. It's very easy to continue looping in that. It's very easy to acquire information that gives that intensity, whether that's orgasm, whether that is clarity, whether that is a download, whether that's an activation. It's all sensory. It's all full of sensations that excite, if you will, and that hypnotic feeling makes a person feel alive. It's very easy for us to get caught up in that.
Yeah, and he said it was very dangerous for any powerful being to spend too much time here.
Mm-hmm. That's why it's always encouraged to go into stillness to at least 10 minutes a day in the morning before you start your day. You know, I've shared with you and many others, 5 seconds after we wake up, we forget that we're sovereign divine consciousness, a living intelligence in the images and the sounds. Image, color, sound alters perception. And why it's so important to get out of the mind, to get out of the brain and get back here to your center, because how the brain operates is from a fractuated neurological pattern. And when you understand that it regurgitates and omits and interweaves with anticipation, with sensation, with memory, rather than new, it's very easy to lose your sense of self, to lose that living essence, that living intelligence. And that's all it is. It's an intelligence.
Yeah, it reminds me too, like you've probably seen people that use those like VR headsets, and they get totally immersed. You can see them doing things and their hands are flailing around. But when they're in there, they're just totally hypnotized by it. And then it's almost like waking up from a dream. Then they take it off and it's like, whoa, here's back to reality again. So, you know, with that type of a concept, I wanted to ask you, how would you answer people that talk about the soul trap? So I don't know if you've heard about it, but people talk about, well, after death, you're recycled, you know, blah, blah, blah. Does that play into it? Like, what's your feelings on that?
Well, it does, because of the emotional attachments and the mental attachments we have to our experiences. As long as it can stay an experience in the moment, and you process and integrate the experience rather than shoving aside the experience and replacing it with your thoughts and your feelings towards the experience. That's where your soul gets trapped. And so when you lay the body down and you go into what so many people call the astral plane, the in-between worlds, if you will, those planes right after death, if you will, all of those experiences that you've experienced along with all of the mental and emotional attachments you have put to them. That is what lures you back towards the light. And I'm sure many people have heard it, many people have not. Never go to the light when you die. Always turn around and face the darkness, face the universe, to avoid that soul trap. And that's very accurate, because as long as you have not made peace with your past, if you will, as long as there is any unfinished business or attachments, emotional attachments, there's always going to be something in the astral plane that is going to be able to manipulate you back into another experience, because you've not been able to let go of it and release it. And that's where the soul gets trapped, because we hold on to attachments as being truth, when the soul doesn't have those emotional or mental or physical attachments to the experience. Only the emotional and mental body and physical body holds those attachments. You know, you have a traumatic experience. Let's say you're walking down the street and you trip, right? And you break your ankle. Well, here you got the physical attachments of pain. You have the emotional attachments and the mental attachments of, oh God, this hurts. Oh God, you know, what am I going to do? I have all these things I have to do. I can't afford to have my ankle broken. And now you've put all of this emotional life force, living intelligence to the detriment, and made the experience of the broken ankle into emotional and mental crises. Versus, okay, what is the message? Where was I not present? What was the purpose in my living experience right now? What is this representation of? Whereas a broken ankle, you've misstepped. So instead of allowing the living intelligence within you to share with you and navigate the experience and what has occurred in the experience, because now the focus is all about what occurred rather than the overall picture of the whole experience.
Right.
The emotional and mental body has just now narrowed it to just a physical experience and has negated the whole experience. You were out taking a walk. Are you following me?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, exactly.
And that's how we trap our soul, and we trap fractals of that living intelligence into those emotional attachments. And then we continue it on and on and on with all of this emotion, all of this drama, all of these thought processes. And you're still telling the story 30 years later.
Right.
And you have rehearsed it so much that now you can't even see where you've trapped yourself or part of your intelligence into that experience, that portion of experience. And now it becomes a record, a recording, rather than a living experience of intelligence. And that's the beauty of Talawanda. He shows just how we trap ourselves. And we don't do it in one way. We do it in every relationship, whether that's the relationship with ourselves, whether that's the relationship with with your home, whether that's the relationship with a romantic partner, business partner, friend, family, it don't matter. We narrow the actual full experience down to an emotion, down to I'm right, you're wrong, a thought process.
Yeah. And then so that's all the personal stuff you're going through. And then you add all the stuff going on the world stage. So you've got all of this input coming in that's getting you totally consumed within the game. And that's how you get hypnotized. Yeah.
And you forget that you chose to be in the game. The movie Free Guy really, really shows that. You should Talawanda and Free Guy together, in the sense that in the movie The Free Guy, you have the gal and the guy who are creating this game, and like you said, the virtual reality goggles, they put them on and create their own character. And so here she is playing this, right, as the character in the game, and becomes enthralled with an artificial intelligence character, because the guy, that her partner that was building the game with her, couldn't allow her to see him, so he created an artificial player. And because it had all the attributes of her business partner and they couldn't express it to each other,
Okay.
He created a version of himself as a character in a game, and she started to develop feeling and focus to this character that was an artificial intelligence created into a character. It didn't actually have a live person behind it like her character. And again, representative of the soul trap of how easy it is to allow the emotions, the emotional and mental body, to now take over your innate living intelligence. And it's no different how Talawanda explains it, how we have fallen for, been hypnotized by our own creations, by the game we chose to create and play in. That is how it is. That's how we've done it. And we carry that. The soul is eternal. The vessel, the body is temporal. But any attachments we put to experience in the temporal world goes with us after the body lays itself down. And that's how we trap ourselves back into coming back in, because that living intelligence, those light particles, don't die with the body. Because you've put life force energy to it. You put living intelligence to them. And so that part that is still attached to still continues on after the body lays down. That's what people call the astral plane. The astral plane of light and shadow. It's no different than when you create something, you also begin its destruction. Unfortunately, we don't allow the cycle of creation and destruction. We hold on and just keep adding to it. More life force energy, more living intelligence. And again, how we have trapped different parts of our intelligences in different dimensions, different experiences.
Yeah, this is good, because what you're talking about now leads me into another segue for something I want to discuss with you. And this is about, and I've got a little clip we can play. This is about intuition. So in the story, Elena Taylor Looks like she's maybe mid to late 20s. She's got a 9-to-5 job. She's working at an architectural firm. She's got her own little apartment. She's got a car. She's going through like the program style of life. And something affected her. And let me just play the clip and then we'll talk about it, because this feeling that she had wound up changing her life. So here we go. Let's try this one more time. Okay, for some reason this clip isn't playing. Let's see here. Well, this is a new program that I'm using, and it's not always behaving itself. But I'll give you the context. Basically, she decides to go on this date with Walter Hebert. And Walter is one of the architects at Lynch and Malone, which is the place that she works at. And she really wasn't into Walter. But when she heard that there was going to be a performance by this magician named Talawanda, she's like, I don't know what it was, but something told me inside that I just had to see that performance. So, we're going through our regular lives and sometimes we get hit with these intuitions. And I wanted to get your opinion about what these intuitions are and how meaningful and listening to them and having life-changing events.
Just like Talawanda presents to Elena, that he never forgets her, he is always with her, he's just in a different universal frequency, right? Different universe. It's no different than what people call your higher self. Some refer to it as the oversoul. I'm going to say it's your connection to God, to source, to the innate living intelligence within. And that is always present. That's not separated.
Normally, I would not have gone out with Walter.
Oh, it just came back.
I see it.
Okay, let's watch this clip. Here we go.
Normally, I would not have gone out with Walter. However, he mentioned that he had a membership to the Magic Castle and that there was going to be a rare performance given by an illusionist named Talawanda. Don't ask me how I knew, but something told me that I had to see that performance.
Yeah, so that was the clip I wanted to play. It's funny how it just jumped back, but
he didn't know, meaning the human mind could not comprehend it. The physical vessels, the multiple bodies could not process it. It was just present. And when you understand it, you don't have to remember it. You don't have to wake up to it. It is always there. Because she followed that, I don't know how I know, I just know, that intelligence. She opened up that doorway that would now manifest that intelligence into a physical experience. And for her, it was named Talawanda. Right. So she heard that the magician was there. But you have to understand, she had already been shifting something inside of her, that living intelligence had already been shifting to now present, oh, he's a member of this club. Do you follow what I'm saying? And so the living intelligence now gave a stage for what was shifting and moving within her to present her an experience to help her awaken, to help her remember. And that's the beauty of that. because your innate, your living intelligence, your intuition, your gut feeling, whatever you need to define it as, is always present.
Yeah.
It never separates itself out from us.
You know what I think would have been one more thing that maybe gave her like a little activation was the name Talawanda itself. So I had done like some breakdowns of the ta, la, wan, and da. But for me, even when you say Talawanda all together, it's, you know, it's almost like you're getting yourself an activation. So when she heard
in
the
ancient Hebrew, they don't have the words together like that. They're ha, la, ta, ya, ba. You know, it's all of those. And to make it harder for ourselves, we have squished them together. Many people have heard me say this is a Honey, I Shrunk the Kids universe.
I've heard you say that.
And that's no different with the word Talawanda. It is all squished together. And then a whole narratives are created to it, just like Anunnaki, just like the word Nibiru. They're actually separate words all squashed together to create a different meaning and definition. And when you really understand what Talawanda is sharing with Alana, you can see the living intelligence at work, in the sense that every experience we have is created from that living intelligence. Whether that living intelligence is pure, like Talawanda is showing her, or whether it is trapped in its own hypnotization. You can see the living intelligence behind it. Just like her, I just need to go there and see that. Just like even in her doubt, when she went to work and her boss says, you have a telegram, you can see the living intelligence behind it. She was doubtful. She was kind of trepidatious, but yet she still pushed forward and still went to Brazil, even though her mind was coming up with all of these narratives. And in every time her doubt presented itself, here comes the living intelligence. Here comes Talawanda sending her flowers, sending her a note, reassuring her, even in that PS, I don't play with romance. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so all of it is showing the dual nature between the living intelligence that we are and the shrunken identity that we have hypnotized ourselves in the experience.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so my thoughts are, I definitely agree with that. And it's leading me to something else that I wanted to discuss with you about the way the book, The Enlightenment, goes. After Alana Taylor has this situation with Talawanda and she like awakens, we'll call it. 2 years later, she disappears. That's the way the story goes. So what happened to her? But before we talk about that, there is a scene. I'm going to see if it's going to let me play this scene, because I think this was part of perhaps what aided Alana Taylor possibly so quickly to go from a 9-to-5 mid-20s woman, working in Los Angeles to, becoming an awakened individual. And this has to do with the concept of eye gazing, because there was a scene towards the very end where they're in a meadow and they're looking into each other's eyes, etc. So I'm going to see if I could get this scene
led
going.
me to a field of soft grass.
Okay, I think I know what's going on with these videos. So what I'm going to do is give me a moment. I'm just going to re-add it. Here we go.
He led me to a field of soft grass. We sat there in silence, searching into each other's eyes. The more I looked at him, the more alive I felt. My vision became sharp and clear. The sounds of birds and a distant stream seemed remarkably close. Colors appeared brighter, and suddenly I felt like I was floating 5 feet in back of my body. It was the strangest, most tranquil feeling I could ever remember. I felt distance between myself and my body. It was a very peaceful sensation, like the feeling I get from a little too much wine, but it was different, much better. Everything was clear. My thinking was sharp, and my perceptions were better than ever. I really felt big. I could almost feel what was on his mind. It felt like he really cared about me.
Yeah, so now one of the reasons I'm bringing this up too is because I had a personal situation with eye gazing that I felt accelerated my going from what I call my sleepwalking mode to my awakening mode. But I wanted to get your opinion about the concept of eye gazing, the biophotons of our bodies releasing energy that we could help each other, or we may have codes for each other.
The eyes are the windows to the soul. When you can be extremely angry with somebody, you can be extremely connected, disconnected, extremely happy. It doesn't matter the frame of emotional or mental aspect of where you're at. If you sit there and stare into another's eyes for longer than 5 minutes, imagery disappears. And what takes over is 355 sensory senses of the body rather than the logical senses of hearing, taste, touch, smell, see.
I've heard you mention that before. Yeah.
And when you stare into another's eyes, there is no other outside of the individual vehicles of expression, outside the individual body mechanism. There is only one soul, there's only one consciousness. And that will always recognize itself. Because consciousness and creation folds upon itself rather than fractuates itself, which is how the human brain experiences and perceives reality in a fractuated state. Because you got different parts of your brain that holds different parts of information of an experience. So it's automatically fractuated. And that information that is stored in different parts of the brain is influenced a lot easier. When you stare into a person's eyes, you go straight to the source of consciousness. And that is always going to fold upon itself. It is always going to circulate that information, that living intelligence. And it heightens everything within the mental, physical, emotional, causal bodies, if you will. And that's why it felt like she could read her mind. It's why it felt like she could feel his love for her. She was tuning into through staring into the eyes, into a part of her intelligence that she could not access without having another to experience herself with. We could sit here, me could sit here, and that intelligence within you and the intelligence within me would be exchanged through the eyes, because the soul doesn't see your image. The soul doesn't see my image. The soul doesn't, close your eyes. It is not disturbed by sight, by color, by tone, by sound. Whereas the human vessel is created to separate into those categorical sensories. And so everything was heightened because as they're exchanging, because he's in a different dimensional frequency, it is activating those dimensional frequencies within her as she stares more and more into it. And in that, like I said, it doesn't matter if you're extremely happy, if you're extremely angry, if you're extremely traumatized, you're extremely healed. It doesn't matter. When it connects, a living intelligence connects with a living intelligence, this physical world don't exist anymore. Because it's only perceived through what the individual body has, for filters, for beliefs, for veils, for whatever frequency it bounces through. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so if people would take the time to do that, how many people have time to do that with their partner or with their kid or whatever? You don't go to your business and sit and tell all of your employees, okay, let's stare into each other's eyes for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to look at you as weird. Although that part of our innate intelligence is saying that's going to do you more good than telling them to go print you 100 copies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so to the human aspect of her brain, Talawanda was a separate being to her, was a separate person to her. But when she stared into his eyes, she felt it as if it was herself. And really, that's what the remembering journey is going to do. It's going to take you beyond imagery, colors, sounds, tones. It's going to take you outside of that fractuation, that kaleidoscope that says there is something separate from you. When everything is a living intelligence, we hypnotize ourselves through sensation, through sound, through sight. You see something and the brain automatically labels, I like this, I don't like this. But when you stare into somebody's eyes, that intelligence doesn't have that separation. And the only thing it can do is ignite you both.
Yeah. And for me, this had a lot of impact because I personally had a situation that involved eye gazing that literally changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, when I was going through this process, and I've told this story before, but basically this back in 2016, my ex-wife was holding this like small event related to Tantra. And she kept on asking me, can I use your backyard? You've got a really nice backyard. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. I don't want you and these crazy tantric people over my house. eventually I said yes. And then they're doing their thing and whatever. And then they came in the house and like, Chris, they're about to do eye gazing. Like, would you like to do that? And I'm like, no, I have no interest in doing eye gazing with any of you people. They wound up convincing me. And the person that I was teamed up to do it was like this young lady, probably in her mid-20s. And probably around the minute and a half mark, I literally almost fell to the ground. Like, I didn't know what was happening to me. And I believe that there were codes, like maybe they were prearranged soul contract type stuff, where she transmitted codes to me. I possibly gave her codes as well. And then I go back into my house and I start, I have a situation where I see felines in my bedroom, very clear. And I'm like, I actually thought somebody put a holographic projector in my bedroom, and I'm looking for the plug. I'm looking where the thing could be. But for me, it was like part of an activation. And I think that with Elena Taylor, she got activated. Like I said, the way the story goes, a couple of years later, she disappeared. Linda, what do you think actually happened to her?
Did she disappear? Or did she go into a higher frequency that was not the physical reality of her physical life, was no longer able to support that frequency? Exactly. So really, she just went into a higher frequency that makes her appear to be gone, to be invisible, to not be there, but yet she's still there. She just can't be seen by the lower frequencies because she's in a higher frequency of living intelligence that creates a light shield around her. But take away the narrative of your experience of codes and activating each other and everything else, and take it to what it is. Yes, there was a physical experience of you gazing into each other's eyes. But take you and her, that separation out of it, and it was living intelligence speaking to living intelligence that didn't need the physical world to define it, to label it. And the only way you could understand it for yourself was, oh, this is activation. Oh, this is coding. Oh, what was this? And really, it was just intelligence speaking to intelligence that expanded your consciousness in upon itself, because it folded in, revealing a different sector of your continuum, if you will. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And it's like the whole Talawanda story is just filled with these little tidbits. There's the main thing that Talawanda talks about when he goes to the Magic Castle and he's talking to the audience there. The audience just seems to love him. The magic tricks that he does, they're just totally astounded by it. And then he tries to explain to them, he does explain very well about how he creates his illusions. He says, you create, a lot of them were professional magicians in the audience. And he said, a lot of you will use devices and other types of tricks to like have a magic trick. But that's not the way Talawanda works. He does it with certainty. He knows how to actually have the reality change around him.
Does it with certainty rather than manipulation.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And then there's other really interesting things that I wanted to get your opinion on. And if you remember, there's a woman in the story. Her name is Athena. So when Elena travels into Talawanda's universe that he created for her, there's a woman there named Athena. And I have a clip here that I want to play, and then maybe we could talk about it real quick. Let's see here. This is about conscious creation.
In astonishment, I repeated her words. He created it? Yes. He makes all his creations simply by envisioning them. You know, let there be light, and suddenly it's there. All the space, all the objects, all the sights and sounds, the gravity, the smells, the oxygen and light. Everything, even the plant and animal life, including me. That's right, he granted me life. And now I can do the same things he can. Not quite as well just yet, but I'm working on it. When he brought me into existence, I was given the name Athena because it reminds him of someone he loves very much.
Yeah, so I thought this was like an interesting part of the film too, because Athena says that Talawanda created her, and then now she, remind me of the movie Free Guy, but now she has the ability to do some of the things that Talawanda was able to do. So this whole concept about conscious creation, children, do you have any input on that?
Do you have kids?
I do.
That was a conscious creation with your wife. You've just brought Athena to life that is now going to be able to do the same thing. Do you have plants in your house? Of course you do. That's where we're at. Yes. So you have brought living intelligence into your home and have created plant life, tree life, this, that, and the other. Yes. No different. So when you look at where Athena says, let there be light, you would not experience color, sound, tones, image by light alone. Because the second you bring forth light, let there be light, you're also bringing forth shadow. Why? Because that is the only way you're going to experience the beauty of your creation. You shut off the light in a room, you see nothing, it is dark, yes? But the second you turn on a light in a room, sure, the whole room has light in it. But okay, let's look at the screen. The whole room is lit up in here. However, why is that corner darker than right here? So the second you bring light, that light will cast a shadow in order for there to be the spectrum of color, of image, of tone or sound. So it is all dependent on your imagination and what you focus your living intelligence on. So just like with you and Greg creating the film of Talawanda, you used your imagination of what you wanted to bring to life, a film of Talawanda. And then Greg used his imagination on, oh, we can do it this way, and this way. But you needed the tools that would bring color to life, bring the story to life. So when you look at a movie, it's created with pixelation, is it not?
Mm-hmm.
Light and shadow that is creating the imagery to make it extraordinary, yes, to make it come alive, to make it feel alive. It's no different.
Yeah, even the music, there's like key music in the background too that adds to the emotion and adds to what's going on in that particular scene. Yeah.
Yeah. So he used his imagination and he used the innate living intelligence to bring it to life. It's no different than when you started your business. You built something and you brought it alive and now call it a business. Yes.
Right.
It's no different. It just seems what's the right word here? The movie, the story Talawanda just seems to be more extraordinary because of how it is presented. A higher dimensional intelligence versus one that is hypnotized into a lower intelligence, but is breaking out of that lower intelligence. And so she's in awe and wonder of what he has created. But what is she in awe and wonder of? The beauty, the magic, the imagery, the color. You follow me? Mm-hmm. The sounds of the birds. But at the same time, have you not experienced that in your human experience? Those moments where you're walking, whether you're by yourself or with somebody, through a park or through the forest or whatever, and that wave of frequency comes through. And all of a sudden, it's more alive. All of a sudden, you can see more. You can, in what you're experiencing, and I use that word experiencing rather than seeing or hearing. What you're experiencing is more depth. And that is the one part where we have veiled ourselves from the depth of creation, the depth of the experience, because it has become all surface level, meaning emotional or mental, or your opinion about it, or your thoughts about it, or your feelings about it, or your trauma about it. And when you can step outside of those dominant 5 physical senses, you can then bring depth to those physical experience, those physical senses, and experience them in a different way, because you have brought depth to it. You have gone beyond just the surface level of it. Same with the eye gazing. There is depth to that living intelligence that is exchanged, that brought a more alive feeling, when really what was being shared was the deeper depths of an intelligence that your cognitive mind could not block or process.
Yeah.
That was beyond the sensory makeup, the sensory system of the body. And that's really what it is, the depth of it. That's what every one of us has been veiled from, the depth of ourselves. Because we've been taught here. But from here down, we're taught to ignore that information. And so when you look into the eyes, it's bringing all of the intelligence through, not just what's recorded here. And that's the beauty of connection. But so many people don't trust that connection, or they'll trust certain aspects of it and yet still allow their filters to separate it into high vibes, low vibes, my truth, your truth, this or that. It's still a separation to intelligence. Or they're not on the same page as somebody else, and therefore no, you're wrong, or you're a demon, or you're infiltrated, instead of allowing intelligence to reveal its depth. Human nature stops it, puts roadblocks up to it, because it doesn't fit into a cognitive sector. of definition, of labels, of characterization. And it's beautiful. As Talawanda, they're driving along, and she cannot distinguish her universe to his universe. She's like, well, no, we were just driving along. And he's like, we left.
That's right.
Your universe. And she goes, but I didn't see no difference. And that is how our living intelligence works. It does not define it by a break-off point. It doesn't define it as, oh, that's Chris's universe. There's a line now there's Linda's universe. It folds upon itself. It interweaves with itself. It's not separate in any way. And so the creation just unfolds in front of you. It's not like you have to die to Elena's universe and have a physical cutoff to say, okay, now I'm in Talawanda's universe. Living intelligence doesn't operate like that. It blends itself and it merges itself and it unfolds with itself. But for her, she had a hard time comprehending that.
Yeah, because that what you're saying reminds me of a specific scene in the film where they're leaving Rio de Janeiro and they're driving through all these back roads. They're following this like long stone wall down this dirt road. And then they come to a large iron gate. And then he asks her, says, say the magic words. So she says something like, I don't know, she said abracadabra or something like that. And the gate opens. And in the car, they pass through the gate. And then later he explains that he did it that way so that she would have like a representation of when they left her physical universe and entered his universe. Mm-hmm. So,
but yet this scenario blended except for that gate. Exactly.
And she would have never, unless he explained that to her, she would have never known. She wouldn't have made that connection. But he made it very clear. He's like, welcome to my world now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And yet there was actually no physical stop and go. You know, we're done with your universe. There was no state boundary that says, you know, welcome to Egypt or you know, welcome to Arizona, welcome to Colorado. You know, there's not that physical representation. So he created a gate so he could explain it to her.
Right. And he explains too that even though, you know, they were in his world maybe for a couple of days, to the physical universe, that could have been 15 minutes or 15,000 years. It doesn't really, you know, the way time works, that doesn't really matter. So there's just like point after point after point. There's one more I wanted to share with you because, you know, we're in Montana and there's a lot of horses here in Montana. Even around my house here, like there's horses like everywhere. It's really beautiful. So Montana is one of those places I think to be if you love horses. And there is a scene related to horses in the film. And I am going to bring that up. I'm going to play it and then we'll talk about it real quickly. So this is the patron saint scene.
Without stopping for breakfast, we went directly to the stables where he had a fabulous selection of fine thoroughbred horses. The stable attendant escorted a magnificent all-white horse named Patron Saint in our direction. Talawanda asked, "Is he all warmed up and ready to go?" "All set," the attendant replied happily. I giggled at Talawanda and said, "I was almost expecting to see a flying horse with wings." He looked at me with a great big smile and replied, "All in good time, my dear, all in good time." We both laughed as we hopped up onto Patron Saint.
Yes, so towards the end of the film, patron saint kind of carries them through the ending scenes. And I thought it was cool, the symbology of a white horse. And patron usually means like a protector, and saint means something that's sacred or holy. To me, it almost felt like the oversoul, like safely carrying them, through the rest of the adventures in Talawanda's universe. But
Horses are very horses are representative of a connection to spirit, to the unseen realms, rather. And where he says all in due time, he has presented this to her to where it would not shock and traumatize the psyche. And in her, because the unwonderment can also lead her astray. And so he's intermixing enough of the living intelligence that he's sharing with her, and explaining of the surroundings from that living intelligence, but yet is putting imagery to an experience to that living intelligence, to where it will guide her, but yet not traumatize the psyche, giving room for the psyche to process, if you will. Because if you noticed, they never found her body. So she didn't die.
good point.
They just can't find her. And yet, really, she's right there. She's just in a higher frequency, a higher experience of living intelligence, that she no longer needs the imagery of the physical world to prove itself to her, of the depth of that living intelligence. Even though it's presented as a love story. And I've said for 15 years, the ultimate love story is the one you have with yourself, with source, your source self. And even though she writes of the experience of how she experienced it, she's also writing of the living intelligence and the depth of that, which she discovered through the experience with Talawanda.
Yeah, and then Talawanda said that she would find others that spoke like her, and perhaps they gave her some missing information or helped her along her path. And then, yeah, obviously she vibrated into a higher frequency.
She chose that creation. She chose the depth to have greater depth with herself, and therefore focused, instead of being caught up in the collective world of information. She took what Talawanda shared with her, and she put all her life force and focused on that living intelligence, and therefore the physical world of the collective she disappeared from, but she didn't disappear from the world. She created her own universe within that world. And it's just presented as a romantic love story, which really it was just the living intelligence within her and her higher dimensional aspect of living intelligence being merged together. and weaved and unfolded itself into something else.
Yeah. And it reminds me too of, before they went on and took the horseback ride with Patron Saint, he asked her, like, what would you like to learn? And she's like, well, something that's always confused me is something that she said, I thought I heard in church. And that was the whole concept of know thyself. So she wanted to know if Talawanda could help her understand that better. And he was like, I don't know, maybe. I've been trying to convince people or tell people about that one for a long time. So that whole concept of to know thyself. And what I wrote here is Talawanda's most important lesson is that every other mystery begins to dissolve when we truly know who we are. Self-knowledge is the doorway to freedom, remembrance, and creation. So what do you think about know thyself, Linda?
When you know thyself, then it's no longer about your human vessel and your individual. Because this becomes a tool.
That's right.
Rather than your label, rather than your name, rather than your personality, rather than your when you individualize yourself, you walk through the collective narratives, right? Because this world is always going to try and railroad you in one way or another, because this is a world of image and fractuations and control and manipulation. And you're either going to allow your emotional and mental and physical bodies to get caught up in it, or you're going to stay with what you now know of yourself, thyself, that is connected regardless of how many bodies are presented in this human world. No matter how many ideations, no matter how many people scream at you, no matter how many people say you're right, wrong, blah, 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 it no longer has power and control over you. You just walk through it and navigate through it, but stay true to the living intelligence that you have woke yourself up to, that you have remembered, because you are not separate from source. You are not separate from God. It is a living intelligence within you. And just because your neighbor don't like it, or somebody on social media is not at the same pedal of information you are, that living intelligence is eternal. Your body, your character, your personality is temporal. And that is where the saying, be in the world, but not of it. You're in it, but you have individualized yourself out of the collective sameness, the collective mentality of comparison, of right and wrong, of my truth, your truth. You have taken yourself out of the schizophrenic bipolarity of opposites, which the world, the collective, represents as a whole. And you live from your living intelligence, not your ideation of it, not your concept of it, not your perception of truth of it, because that living intelligence doesn't need sight or sound, image or hearing to alter it. And what you see and what you hear will automatically, because of how the human brain works, is automatically going to alter your perception. So when you know thyself, that thyself is an intelligence, and it takes in and can see, if you will, beyond the sight and hearing of the human individual. It is not altered by that. Whereas the human perception, you can be seeing something and you're going to perceive it differently with no sound than if you have sound included in it. If you can perceive something, you could be watching something with no sound, and then you turn the volume on, and it has just now altered your perception. And so you can put the two side by side. You were seeing this. This is how you perceived it, this thing that you were watching. But then you can come over to this booth and you can put headphones on that have a car crashing in the background or grinding metal or whatever. And it just now has altered. Well, I was wrong. I thought I seen this, but then when I came over to this booth and had the sound with it, now I perceive it differently. And thyself, the living intelligence, is not altered by sound and sight, by image, by color, by tones. So to know thyself is to connect and know from the living intelligence that you are, versus the personality, the character, the image, the identity you have accumulated as the vessel named Chris, if you will.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the hardest things, I think, for people to understand, is that, like, I'm not just Chris, you're not just Linda. This is just one aspect of, let's say, infinite number of fractal experiences that we're having. And when we know thyself, we begin to realize that.
It's a label to a fractal of consciousness experience that has been had.
Yeah.
It's just a label for a record.
Yeah.
But to a human who has awakened themselves or not awakened themselves, they still get caught up in the image.
Absolutely.
They still get caught up in the sound. Well, you sound like a man, but the image doesn't match it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so why do you have a problem with how I sound or how I look? But the human makes it important, where thyself, the living intelligence, it doesn't see it. That's why I've always shared with you all to close your eyes. What you hear and see is a living intelligence, but you are blinded and deafened by sound and image, by color. You're caught up in the optical illusion of light and shadow, because you've brought forth light, but you've also brought forth a shadow that the light casts as well. And into the human who has been conditioned to either or, your living intelligence, thyself, doesn't have an either or filter.
Right.
It doesn't see anything as good or bad, color or image or tone or sounds. The human body is what breaks it into those things. But the intelligence in and of itself, close your eyes, it doesn't see or hear anything out here separate from itself. It doesn't hear Chris's voice. It doesn't see Chris. It only sees and hears a living intelligence of itself. And it's not even hearing and seeing it the same way. It doesn't need a pixelated image. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't need to split itself into a female voice, a male voice, a high octave, a low octave. because it doesn't hear in sense and see that way. It just knows itself as living intelligence. It's only humans who have to break it into everything, to have to give it a whole narrative, a whole explanation.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Just like truth and no truth, no truth, my truth, this truth, that truth. Truth is a living intelligence. Life is a living intelligence. Grace is a living intelligence. Nature is not trees and plants and grass. That's what we're told it is. The phrase, it's just my nature. Nature is a living essence. But yet everybody is saying, no, it's trees and it's plants and it's dirt and it's grass. In one aspect, that is called nature, absolutely. But when you're talking about the soul, when you're talking about consciousness, when you're talking about energy, it is a living intelligence. It's not a person. It's not a being. It's not illuminated or shadowed or this or that. It is not separated into any kind of schizophrenic bipolar opposites of duality. It is an intelligence. And that is thyself, a living intelligence, the living word of source of God, rather than a written word, rather than a studied word, rather than a created blockage of sentences. And that's hard for people to comprehend. That can only resonate with an opposite dual existence. What do you mean there's no good and evil? What do you mean there's no positive and negative? No, you were conditioned that there was. But the intelligence of God, the living intelligence of source, that spark within, does not abide by limitational rules. It does not fractuate itself.
Yeah. And is at the same time too, having all these different experiences from, different roles that we've played, et cetera. Something that may help some people is on my Substack, I created this meditation that involves like looking at the mirror, and I call it the Creator Remembers, so that you can realize that it's not just you, this one person, but there are all these other experiences that you've had. And for myself personally, when I would do the meditation, I would just see myself start morphing into all these different faces and wardrobes and time periods. And it was like, and it's not a new concept. People have they're aware of that. They're aware that this is they know about reincarnation. They know this isn't the only lifetime, et cetera. Although this appears to be a pretty important lifetime from the many that we've had, because everything that's happening. Yeah. So yeah, it just
into the shadow.
Yeah, because
a lot of people don't like that concept, that accuracy. They just want the light.
Good point. That's true.
But wherever there is light, there is shadow. And to only embrace one, you're living by half the architecture of yourself. And if the intuition, if the soul, if everything is hidden, if you will, the formless, the unseen realms, that has been known as the shadow, that people have labeled it the darkness, people have labeled it the void, people have labeled it 1,001 different names. they've separated into heaven and hell, within and without. When you take again that duality of opposition and you neutralize them, love is your shadow as much as it is your light. But the light blinds to the shadow, ignores the shadow. It focuses on the light that's right here versus, well, that's just in the background, so it don't matter. But it's still all part of the same experience. It is just creating an optical illusion, because you can turn around and you can be in that corner, and now all of a sudden the light is going to be there. Why? And the shadow is going to be back here. Why? Why, Christopher?
Yeah.
Because you're the light source that is creating it, that is creating the appearance.
I know, because
shadow.
That leads into another concept about how the reality is being projected.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. So do we need the sun? Do we need this? Or is this whole everything we're seeing a projection from within?
It's a projection. How much of it is your projection? How much of it is your projection, your living intelligence swallowed by the projections of every other being, called a collective?
Right. Yeah. So we've talking about a lot of like cool things. We've gotten into some parts of there's actually probably so many more things about Talawanda we could talk about and go into.
Oh, let's create another podcast and we'll go deeper into certain parts of it.
Yeah, I mean, not just that, but there's like a lot. I mean, we've had some pretty deep conversations. Like we could go well beyond Talawanda, where I think people would find it very illuminating and to help them know thyself even better. So,
oh, well, let's come up with topics and we'll talk on them.
Yeah.
It's beautiful because we all hold, we're all the same source consciousness. And yet, because of our own beliefs, conditioning, programming, filters, attachments to our experiences, we fail to realize in many ways that living intelligence is a wisdom that we can gift each other. Unfortunately, people like to babble over information and put polar opposites to it, truth or untruth, rather than it just being information, being a living intelligence where all of it, whether it's labeled light, dark, good, bad, positive, negative, high vibes, low vibes, truth, untruth, whatever, it's a living intelligence. And when you take the opposites out of the picture, that intelligence is going to help you in one way or the other. Why? Because it attracted, regardless of how the human wants to label it, into its space so it can expand its intelligence. And that's the beautiful thing of it. People's opinion of what we talk about don't matter, because that's their individual bubble of their human filtering. But when you can exchange the living intelligence and let it be that you have living intelligence, I have living intelligence, and we're bringing it together to expand our intelligence. You follow me? To expand our consciousness from different angles and looking at it and presenting different angles of that. It helps us both expand. And when we can take oh, well, this is my intelligence, and this is my intelligence, and that's your intelligence, and that's your intelligence. When we can take that out of it, are we not just exchanging and merging consciousness of living intelligence? And that's the beauty of it. It's no different than I'm in one room, you're in another room. We're still staring into each other's eyes of intelligence rather than it being about Linda or Chris. If that makes sense.
Sure.
And that's the beauty of it. If we take it away about how we interpret it and just explore and discover the wonderment in it, that's the magic that Alana, the wonderment, because it's not being fit into a box, it's folding and expanding upon itself like a living tapestry. And in it, we're illuminating it. Even if we don't realize we're illuminating that intelligence, because we're using a life force spark of light to share and expand that intelligence instead of it being about the vessel, the tool of expression. But people get caught up with the tool of expression called a body, called Chris, called Linda, called Tom, Dick, Harry. And that's what Talawanda is showing her. And that was the beauty, really the beauty of it, was showing her, you have created it all along. But there's a delay for you because you're hypnotized in it. Whereas me, I have the certainty that I am the living intelligence and creating it.
Certainty.
Yes. And yet to the human aspect, you have to let go of certainty and embrace the unknown and the uncomfortable. And so the living intelligence can experience through you. And when it becomes an experience rather than an opinion of opposites, of separation, that's really where the magic and the wonderment come in.
Yeah. And now in this time period, I think from what you're saying, whenever I hear you talk about this luminance, I think about the concept of homo luminous. And I've mentioned it before. You've spoken about it for a while now. Maybe we could leave everyone with some thoughts about what's possibly going to be happening over the next few years related to this, I'll call it evolutionary concept.
The more people tune in and allow the living intelligence to experience life, living life, rather than trap it in a concept of mine and yours and this and that and in all of these polar opposites, the more the spark within us illuminates the living intelligence, which is what will be experienced out here, rather than the schizophrenic bipolarism of opposites of either or, which is what is perceived and experienced dominantly. The holographic overlay versus illuminating the real living intelligence of consciousness. That's why Alana was so in awe and wonderment as she's looking around, and why it was more enhanced, because it wasn't about Talawanda. It was about the certainty he had of him being a living intelligence experiencing. He created an experience, not an overlay, holographic overlay of illusion from emotion and emotional attachment or mental attachment of opinion, of thoughts, of assumptions, of the vessel regurgitation of information versus the intelligence that's alive within the body, that the body holds. And that's the difference of two worlds, of two frequencies, worlds. One, you're living as a living intelligence that is individualized, individuated rather, versus an individual interpreting it. Two very different things, two very different worlds. It's going to be, one is influenced by a collective, one is not. One is trapped by, it's all about how I see it, which is still coming from an aspect of the body versus being embodied, but understanding you're experiencing it as a living intelligence of wholeness versus individual interpretation and perception. Perception and intelligence are two very different things. As long as there is an opposite at play, regardless of what it's labeled, it is putting a veil on the experience. And so the living intelligence cannot experience itself fully.
Yeah, that goes into, this is a note that I took, waking up through remembering freedom does not come from escaping the world, but from becoming unhypnotized. Enlightenment is remembering who you were before you accepted limitation.
Therefore, it can't be about a polar opposite or a bipolar one.
Right. So, let me just mention this again. What would you say about this homo luminous concept?
Are you not a spark of living intelligence that is illuminating the intelligence within you?
Mm-hmm.
And when you release all of the attachments of mental, emotional, and physical attachments to experience, you're going to become a homo illuminated. You're going to produce light rather than the light out here being what illuminates image. You're going to illuminate and shine the living intelligence rather than image of this and that. And through that illumination, the homo luminous, you're merging both aspects. You're merging the living intelligence into the body rather than the body being a limitation that covers the living intelligence under labels and definitions. So in that homo luminous state, Elena disappeared. She didn't die. She just illuminated the information and let go of the attachments to where those in the frequency of emotional and mental and physical attachments to experience are now veiled from her because she's not weighted down into those frequency realms via the attachments. That's why out here you have everybody experiences it through their own perception because of what they hold to veil their living intelligence, their limitations of it. be in the world, but not up. And the more you build the light from within, live by that living intelligence, it brings that awe and wonder. It illuminates that which you can't see. It illuminates it through the collective and individual perception holographic filters. In other words, you can look out and you can see the collective, or you can have the living intelligence illuminate which way to go, what to navigate through the collective holographic overlays.
Holographic overlays. And then that's a whole other subject. That could be another podcast that we talk about. I know we've had conversations in the past where like, oh, that's, whether I said it or you said it, oh, that's just a holographic overlay. That may not have actually happened. I'm like, no, what are you talking about? That actually happened. So, but there are these concepts just like the way the reality works. We're kind of like in a very, I'll say high tech. I don't want to say quantum, is like well beyond quantum, but this whole experience that we're having, when people really begin to appreciate what this place is and how it works, and then how to go to the next level, like we're talking about with Homo Luminous, then the world becomes your playground, so to speak. And that's
you realize it was always a playground. People just got too caught up and hypnotized and lost within their characters.
Exactly. We came here to have fun and have these experiences. Yeah.
And instead you became miserable. You got caught up in it. It was no longer about the living intelligence. It was about your opinions, your assumptions, your thoughts, your feelings towards the experience. And
right.
Those are the holographic overlays. And when you got almost 8 billion people contributing, how many holographic overlays do you got?
Oh my God, I know.
In the collective world that we physically see. And all the narratives and all the stories and all the definitions and all of it to distract, and causes the distraction because you're getting caught up in the overlays. Exactly. You're not seeing the structure, the foundational structure of it.
Exactly. Yeah. Then you break your ankle.
The beauty of it.
Yeah, you break your ankle, you go through that. Different things are happening with politics, and you're getting all upset about this war and this person and blah, blah, blah. And
right. Because you're presented as a war. People don't even really understand truly. Some do. There's collectives out there that do. That can see through the physical presentation of what Israel and Iran actually represent from an energetic standpoint. But, there's a lot of the collective out here that don't want to hear it. They like the narratives that they've convinced themselves of or have been convinced of.
Exactly.
And when you understand that it's a bunch of overlays put together to create a narrative to make it look like something that it's not, that's too traumatic for some people's psyches.
Yeah.
What do you mean I'm caught up in a narrative? Energy goes where focused attention is. And it's a choice.
Absolutely.
It's all a choice.
It's all a choice.
It's all a choice.
It's all a choice. So I want to thank you again for having this conversation with me and diving.
Thank you.
Oh, you are indeed welcome. And
I love this. I love getting into deep conversations.
Yeah. And we could plan some very interesting conversations that I think will help illuminate people and, bring, they may not agree, and they may be like, oh, Chris said this, I don't agree with that. Or Linda said this, that. But then, things start to settle.
whether they agree or just don't agree, that's their illusion to be in, because it's not about, it's just a matter of sharing intelligence. And the second a polar opposite is applied to it, an either or, that's their illusion. They've just trapped themselves in, not ours. We're just sharing intelligence. So there's no opinion that matters. Humans just like to think it matters. You know, I don't agree with Chris, so I have to make a comment and correct him. No, what you're doing is coming from your ego, trying to identify it as being your intelligence, and it's not. Because your intelligence isn't going to have that disagreement. Your living intelligence is going to understand that it is part of its creation that is now presenting itself to itself. And it's just intelligence. And intelligence doesn't have right or wrong. It's always just expanding upon itself. So we're just sharing intelligence. We're not forcing it. We're not telling people that this is the truth and the only truth there is, because we've taken the polarity of truth and untruth out of it. We're just sharing intelligence.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that matters. When you know thyself and that you're a living intelligence, you can keep it to yourself or you can share it, and we chose to share it.
True.
You know,
exactly.
What they do with it is on them.
And by the way, if anyone that's watching this has some thoughts about, I'd like to learn more about this particular topic, or why don't you guys talk about this, leave things in the comments below, and we can address those things. I know even without anyone saying anything, I could come up with a whole list just from some of the conversations we've had. So
the key is to not make it about your information, to understand that it's consciousness, a living intelligence, and that we all hold that intelligence, and we all hold a piece of wisdom that no one else has, and it's that intelligence that we bring forth when you know thyself as source, rather than it being Linda, rather than it's a tool of expression and personality. And as long as you can stay neutral to it, then you're not infiltrating the living intelligence. And that's really where we want to come from.
Neutrality.
Is that 0 point in saying this is the intelligence. And for me, which is hard for a lot of people with me, is I always take it back to, there is no you. There is no me. There is only this. And what you're saying is still an ancient narrative, an ancient story, an ancient correlation. And until we all get away from that correlation, that comparison, all of the mythologies, all of the narratives, there is still a limitation, a definition put to the living intelligence, which is stopping it from being brand new in this moment, because it's still being put to the ancient past or the ancient future past, or compared to Atlantis or Lemuria, or all of these narratives that are holographic veils of labels that has been given to and compressed into a shrunken ideation of people, of beings, rather than it being living intelligence, living essences, and living essences, and has been turned into people through interpretation, even of mythology. And it's called mythology for a purpose, because every moment is brand new. It's not, that living intelligence isn't limited by the year we were born and the year we die, or our birthdays, or this or that. It's just an intelligence that has no boundaries, that has no limitation, that has no separation. And the more we can get back to being living intelligence that shares the intelligence of it, it creates experience of living experiences, rather than past being compared to past experience, past knowledge, past clarity. The greatest wisdom there is the only way to measure love is to love without measure. But love has no definition. And as long as it's compared to something, it is being measured. As long as there is opinion or truth and untruth, or above and below, light and dark, good and evil, as long as there is an opposite put to it, included in it, there is a separational veil that is still being promoted as being a living intelligence, but it's still compared one way or another to a narrative. And that intelligence only has experience. It doesn't have descriptive narratives. That's why all your mythologies, regardless if it's ancient Egypt, if it's Rome, if it's Greece, if it's this, if it's that, they all, Hinduism, I mean, all of them, religions, whatever angle you come from, they all have their own deities that tell the same story. And until you get out of all of those narratives, consciousness is still limited to a past, or, and it's still trapped within that narrative, that mythology, that story. Therefore, it's an existing intelligence. It's not a living intelligence in the moment now. Because consciousness is always ever expanding and evolving itself through movement. And the now is the only place that it's brand new. And this now moment, the experience you're going through today, or tonight, or this morning, until you can let it be its own experience without bringing anything of the moment before, yesterday, a year ago, into it. The second that is brought in, even ancient past, you are creating a distortion to that living intelligence, a limitation, because it's pure and innocent in the moment. Until we put definition or comparison or the past or the future, whatever it is, we attach to it, because the living intelligence has no attachments. It doesn't have a previous narrative. It doesn't have an opinion. It has an experience, and that's the difference. It's pure and innocent. It's just experiencing it.
You are not the body. That's one of Talawanda's central teachings, is that we're not human bodies having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings temporarily identifying with the body.
Therefore, no opinion matters. No opposite
True.
attraction matters.
True.
And that's the beauty of knowing thyself. You become a living intelligence rather than a personality or a character or an opinion or an assumption or an accumulation.
Yes.
That's the beauty of it. So let's go be living intelligences, having an experience.
Let's do it.
Pizza
And-
for dinner.
Let's dance while we're doing it.
Let's dance while we're doing it.
Absolutely.
Dancing through life.
Yeah. Best way to raise your vibration is to dance.
Absolutely. Just dance in the moment and just let the intelligence come through motion.
There you go.
Thank you for having me. I love you, Christopher. Big hugs.
I love you too. Big hugs to you. If anyone watching this hasn't seen Talawanda yet, well, here's your invitation. You've already gotten a little taste of some of the higher principle concepts there, but I think you'll really enjoy the movie. So I want to encourage everyone. And on this channel, on my Flame of Therion channel, I also have the making of Talawanda. So if you want to explore how it was made, it's a great way to get introduced to Greg and how he does his work at Storylance. So,
and it's amazing. Christopher and Greg have done an amazing job on it.
Thank you. Thank you. And it was fun. And we're working on more stuff. It's never ending.
Just like us. Never ending, never beginning.
Yeah, just like us. All right, Linda.
Have a blessed day, Christopher. And the audience, have a blessed day.
Until next time.
Until next time.